Hi everyone. So I've been taking the last few days to reflect on and process all of the different forms of feedback that came from my original video on land expropriation, which I have now since removed. Most of the feedback that I got was overwhelmingly negative, in the sense that basically everyone is very scared and very angry, and everyone is speaking from that place inside of them. And as we all know from our personal experiences, when we are living in that kind of state, when we're living and speaking from that place of intense fear, intense anger and hatred, then the things that we speak and the things that we do are not very pleasant. So the common theme in all of this negative feedback is that it's a very, let's call it a very typical response where an individual locks onto one particular belief or one particular definition or point and is unwilling to consider anything else, and that kind of turns into somewhat of an extremist type of view, because nothing else is even considered at all. So what actually drives this kind of worldview is something that we can all relate to, because we have all experienced it to one degree or another. Interesting thing about anger and hatred is that very often it is driven by fear. Now, something that we can all relate to is fear, yes, but also what we want from life. We want to be happy. We want to have the opportunity to be happy. We want to have the opportunity to create good lives for ourselves. And in the world as it is now, there are very few people who have that opportunity, and even fewer who have that guaranteed, in a sense. So when we are in a position where we feel threatened, where we feel like the things that we want and the things that we need are unattainable, then it creates this experience of, yes, fear, which then in turn becomes something far more fierce. But it also creates a deep sadness and a deep feeling of powerlessness, where no matter what I do, nothing gives. Nothing is helping me to create the life that I want, the life that I want to give to my family. No matter what I do, I cannot get to that point. So it is understandable. This is how the point works, where when you're in such a hopeless, and it's almost like a form of absolute despair, coupled with the fear of never being able to really change your life, either you're going to get lucky and be able to rise above it and be able to create a better life for yourself, which is very rare, or what happens most of the time is one of two things. You give in to the hopelessness and the despair, and you're just an empty shell going through the motions. Or you get very, very angry, and because nothing that you do can change anything, you start to blame everything around you, all the people around you, the history, the government, the structure of your society, everything becomes everyone else's fault. And you will not rest until those people pay for what they've done to you. And when they are finally dealt with in an appropriate way, then you will finally be able to live the life that you actually want. The life that would make you happy and satisfied and content. So remember, when you're facing another person who is coming from a position of having been disempowered for their entire lives, who has never been able to have access to the opportunities that would give them the life that they would want to have, do not fear or despise another person just because of what they have come to within themselves after having led a difficult and unsatisfying life. Those of us who've never been in that position of complete powerlessness, we don't easily understand where other people are coming from. If you're speaking to a refugee who has fled their home because of intense conflict, who's lost most of their family to that conflict, it is very difficult to relate to the incredibly deep trauma and incredibly powerful sense of powerlessness that they will have experienced and maybe still do experience. So I'm not saying that everyone who's had a tough life is justified in responding in hatred and anger, and that the appropriate response to a difficult life is to take up arms and destroy everything around you. What I am saying is that each of us has that responsibility to each other to take a moment to consider where someone else is coming from. And instead of judging them for maybe being in a point of having reached an extreme type of reaction, instead of judging them, find a way to support them. Find a way to be part of creating a world where no one ever has to face that again, where no one ever has to experience that. And yes, at the end of the road, there are going to have to be a lot of changes to how we live. All of us. And the most important of those changes is going to be who we are, how we think, how we treat each other, how we speak to each other, what we see as acceptable for another person to go through. Because when something like poverty becomes completely unacceptable, then we will do anything it takes to make sure that it never happens. And that is not something that we have been doing now, because in some way, shape or form, we accept its existence. And we accept it as a part of life, and we accept that there's nothing that we can do about it. So if we start changing how we see those things, one by one, the more of us who are standing together within this unacceptable stance of the things that we will no longer accept in the world, then we will create a different way forward, a different way to live together, a different way to solve our problems, different ways to develop solutions. We are innovative, we are creative. We have such a deep well of imagination to draw from. We can solve the issues that we face. And we don't have to resort to violence. We don't have to resort to bullying each other or hurting each other. we can find a way to create a better world. So I just wanted to share these points that I've been looking at, because when I read through the comments that were coming up on the video, now that original video I wasn't satisfied with, I realized that I had not yet effectively looked at the entire point before I made the video, which was why it triggered so many reactions. But still, seeing the extremity of the comments there, it triggered an experience of hopelessness. Like, what's the point? Humanity's too far gone. People are too cruel. People are too willing to resort to hurt and violence and conflict to be able to change anything. Things will have to get a lot worse before anyone will be willing to consider a different way forward. And I moved myself through that experience and came back to the conclusion that I always come back to, which is that I may not be able to change people's minds. I may not be able to change the world on a large scale. I may not be able to change economics and politics on a large scale. However, I am able to be an example, and I am able to live by the principles that I see would be beneficial to life on Earth. And that if I did not do that, then I would not be able to live with myself. I would not be able to face myself at the end of my life and know that I did everything that I could. So, I'm going to do everything that I can. I'm going to keep trying to find different ways to prove that humanity can be better. We can rise above the pettiness, we can rise above the hatred, we can rise above the challenges, and we can create a beautiful world. We can create heaven on earth for everyone. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to send me a direct message or to leave a comment on this video. And I'm just thinking about the comments on the last videos. In any case, if you would like to support me, you can do so on Patreon or on Steemit, which is a social network essentially where you can send the Steem cryptocurrency to each other. The link to my profile is also below. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.